Ambassador, I want to get back to the topic of critical minerals. In your opening statement, you described the really dominant position China has with critical minerals in Africa. And unfortunately, America lost significant ground in the Biden administration. And you focused on the supply chain, and President Biden canceled mineral leases for the Twin Metals mine in Minnesota. And the administration also deliberately rejected Alaska's Ambler Road project. And blocking domestic critical minerals mining only reinforces our overseas critical mineral supply chain reliance, and that's a market, unfortunately, that China dominates. Less than 1% of the global rare earth element refining capacity exists in the United States. Most U.S. mined or collected rare earth element material is sent to China for separation and processing. Trump's executive order calling for, quote, immediate measures to increase American mineral production has put us back on the right course. We need your leadership to marshal resources to cultivate partnerships in the critical mineral sector in Africa. And for the United States to be an alternative to China in Africa, we need to create real alternatives in Africa. We need to translate the talk and policy into tangible action and impact. Could you please describe the efforts underway within the department to work with our international partners across Africa and U.S. companies to build a more resilient, transparent, and diversified supply chain of critical minerals from Africa to the United States?
Thank you very much for raising that. I spend more time working with the American private sector than I do with government officials because they're the ones who are going to be key to solving this issue. It would be easy and cheap and ultimately disastrous to continue to rely on China for these sorts of things. We do have to have our own domestic capacity. I'm not the one who does domestic work, but there are people across this government that do, and we engage on a regular basis. When it comes to making sure our allies and partners are involved as well, I spent a good bit of time this morning with the European Union's Peace and Security Committee because they're concerned about these issues as well, and they also have a challenge that they need to invest in minerals processing and usage. Quite simply, it's my job to get the throughput for that processing. As we have operations in Houston for developing critical minerals processing, we have new operations also coming up the Mississippi Valley, particularly in Arkansas, I believe. It's my job to get the throughput for that, and that's where I'm engaging with the mining companies and with the transportation companies and the power companies to make sure that that's doable.
China has also been leveraging its power to advance its diplomatic goals and undermine American diplomacy. And it uses its relationship to undermine, in particular, the diplomatic status of Taiwan. In April, Somalia banned Taiwanese passport holders from entering the country in response to deepening ties between Somaliland and Taiwan. This action by Somalia prevented Taiwan's foreign minister from undertaking a planned visit to Somaliland. As if the Chinese Communist Party's political interference wasn't enough, there are reports that the support China provides to the Somali government makes its way to anti-Somaliland groups opposing Somaliland. Let me be clear. China is leveraging Somalia against the pro-U.S., pro-Israel, pro-West Somaliland because of Somaliland's relationship with Taiwan. How should the United States approach this challenge and similar efforts by China to undermine Taiwan's diplomatic status in Africa and the Horn specifically?
Thank you very much. The question of Taiwan across Africa is hugely important. Taiwan is an extremely productive, positive, and responsible member of the international community. And so our engagements with them and cooperative engagements with them across the continent matter. And in the countries where they're finding problematic issues, where we believe at the behest of China, they're receiving harassment from those governments. For us, it's critical to make clear to those governments that when they harass Taiwan like that, they're also making it clear their own lack of commitment to a positive kind of engagement with an open society. And for that reason, they would be putting in jeopardy or calling into question their relationship with us. And so those are the kinds of conversations we need to keep having. We need to make sure it are understood. It's best to be able to stave these off before they become public, but diplomacy is often operates in an imperfect information environment. But making sure that people understand afterward that this is going to affect the relationship with us. And that's why we were happy that the government of Somalia actually rescinded that order and started respecting the Taiwanese passports again.
Tell us a bit about how the United States should be assisting and strengthening partners like Somaliland to counter China.
We engage with partners like that, the ones who are looking to go in a positive direction, who have that positive trajectory. We'll meet them where they are and find ways to engage. And we do have extensive engagement with Somaliland. We do currently respect the territorial integrity of Somalia, and the decision of its construction is a question for Somalians, including Somalilanders. But for us, it's vastly more important that all of these different groups and these different states recognize the greater threat of ISIS and al-Shabaab, which are causing just traumatic attacks and mayhem in their country, that's the real enemy, and that they need to work together against that rather than spending their efforts with political infighting amongst themselves.
Okay, so one more question. I'm deeply concerned about our posture in Africa regarding space development. This is an area where the United States must lead. We already have a NASA presence in South Africa, Angola, Rwanda, and Nigeria, are all signatories to the Artemis Accords. Several other countries, including Kenya, are also emerging as leaders in developing space capabilities. Africa's space industry is ripe for U.S. commercial diplomacy. The department should be working hand in hand with the private sector to help our partners in Africa develop their own space capabilities. Last month, I met with 11 members of Botswana's National Assembly, and I have since learned in March, Botswana launched its first satellite into space in partnership with SpaceX. This is the type of commercial partnerships we need to see more of. What are your thoughts on commercial space diplomacy, and how can we push back on China through building space partnerships in Africa?
Thank you for that. Space is an exciting new opportunity for the continent, for everyone in the world. The African Union just established its African Space Agency with a founding engagement in Cairo. We were there in force because this is where we can accomplish a lot of interesting things. So we hit on that. When Botswana was launching its satellite with SpaceX, the president was flying to California for that, so we frankly made sure by inviting him to stop into Washington, because we specifically wanted to recognize what it means to have a forward-looking policy. I don't think I'm breaching any confidence when I say that Secretary Rubio described it as the single best meeting he'd ever had. It was all positive. But this is what happens when you work with a government that really wants to do things the right way. And that's why, even though we still have to advocate for American companies in Botswana, we talk to them about ongoing practices and with their neighbors, the simple fact is they're a good partner. We engage with them extensively, and we end up having tremendous success with it. And they're an example for the rest of the region.
Great. You may have to tell the secretary that he hurt our feelings, that the meeting was better than when he meets with us. That really is hurtful. Senator Booker.